right, so this is my walking music. For those of you who've been a part of TFC for longer than the pandemic, y'all know that this is a song we sing when we gonna walk. Like if we're doing an offering or something like that. Something cool, something chill, something fun. If you know it, sing it with us. If you don't know it, it's black church music, so we just gonna repeat the same thing over and over again. You'll catch on, trust me. All right, let's sing it right here. Sing, just wanna praise
you
forever,
forever
and ever,
and ever
and ever,
and ever,
for all you've done for me, blessings and glory, and honor, they all belong to you. Thank you, Jesus, for blessing me. Stay right there. Sing, just wanna praise you forever,
forever
and ever,
and ever
and ever,
and ever,
for all
you've done
for me. Sing, blessings and glory, and honor, they all belong to you. Thank you, Jesus, for blessing me. Let's take it up right here.
Just wanna praise you
forever, and ever,
and ever
and ever,
and ever,
for all
you've
done
for me.
Sing, blessings and
glory,
and honor, they all
belong to you.
Thank you, Jesus, for blessing me. One more time, take it up. Oh,
just wanna praise you forever
and ever
and ever
and ever
and ever, for all you've done
for me. Sing, blessings and glory, and honor, they all belong to you.
Sing, blessings and glory,
and honor,
they all belong to you.
sing, blessings and
glory,
and honor,
they all belong to you.
blessings and
glory,
and honor, they
all belong to you.
sing, blessings and
glory,
and honor, they all
belong to you.
sing, blessings and glory,
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 and honor,
they all belong to you.
Thank you, Jesus, for blessing me. What's up, everybody?
Hey.
Welcome to Bible and Beyond Live. It's your main man, Christian. We're here. It's Saturday. It's 4 Eastern. We got Callie here who's going to be leading us today.
And y'all, look who we got on the screen. Well, look who we got on the screen. We convinced Darnell to get on the screen. He with us today.
Hello,
Everybody
everyone.
knows. Yeah. Everybody knows Darnell from our Facebook groups. He's one of our top conversation starters. Like, y'all know Darnell is going to keep us thinking, keep us talking and asking questions. So we're excited to have Darnell on the screen with us today, showing some love. And
I
then
appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. And then we got Nani, who is just one of my favorite people. Nani is with us today. She's going to drop some knowledge on us. I'm just really excited. Who we got here in the chat? Y'all see anybody y'all know in the chat? See Renee here. Hey, Renee. Marielle, what's up? Brittany on the virtual hospitality. Shout out to the virtual hospitality team. Like, for real. They do a really, really good job of making sure that people feel welcome and feel seen. So shout out to the virtual hospitality team. Brittany is on duty today, and Adiana, who puts everything together. Shout out to her for leading our virtual hospitality. Susan is here. Tiffany. Who else? Oh God, Stephen Thurston's here. Jesus. Kelly, we might have to pivot. Stephen is here.
Let's say, do we need to take you like to the safe room or something?
Yeah. Is there any way to mute him? We have to figure something out here. Stephen is here. Hey Tamara, good to see you. Mary, we're glad you're here. My mama's here. Hey mom, it's good to see everybody. So we're excited about today. We're going to be led by Callie in chapter 9 of All About Love by Bell Hooks, as we talk about love and mutuality. So y'all get ready. Callie is asking us some really big questions today.
Only because Belle made us think about it, okay? So she did not let us off the hook for these 2 chapters. So
she did not. Nani, are you comfortable sharing what you shared earlier about like how you had to think through these questions? Tell them.
I was like, I think I need to get consent from my partner before. How do I generalize my answers? But no, We're safe. TFC is safe.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Pamela doesn't even know. I was thinking through the questions today, and I was thinking, I want to tell this story. And I was like, nah, I can't tell that story yet. And I'm not even about to call her and ask her. Let me find something else. But yeah, today is going to be dope. I'm going to go ahead and pray for us. And then Callie is going to lead us in our emerging generations moment. So I want to invite you to get into whatever posture of prayer helps you to connect with the divine. Some people here like to bow their heads and close their eyes. Some people like to keep their eyes open and gaze. Some people like to lift their hands. Whatever helps you to connect with the divine, I want to invite you to do that in this moment. God, we thank you for this digital gathering. We thank you that in the words of Marielle, even when we're scattered, we're still gathered. For those of us who come together in this place called TFC to continue to expand our love for you as we expand our love for our neighbors, as we expand our love for ourselves. So God, help us to continue to grow in our love in all of those areas. It's in all of your names that we pray. Amen and Ashe, Ashe and Amen. All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and kick it over to Callie, and she is going to lead us in our emerging generations moment.
all right, well, hey everyone, this is our emerging generations moment. It's the time for all of our youngest worshipers and also for our kids at heart, right? We all have an inner child that needs these emerging generation moments too, I think. So I want to invite each of you to lift up your hands and wiggle those fingers and put both of your hands on your tummy We're going to take 2 deep breaths. Okay, breathe in and let it out. One more time, deep breath in and let it out. So for today's emerging generation moment, I want to tell you a story about a friend I know. So when we were kids, I had this friend named Sally. And so Sally was, trying to get used to being in a new school, meeting new friends. It was the beginning of the school year. So that time where it's like you're learning all these new people, and she felt a little nervous. And so this other kid came up to Sally, little kid named John, and told Sally, "Hey, I want to be your friend." And Sally's like, "Yes, I have a new friend right off the bat. Things are going to work out great for me." And she said, "Yes, I would love to be your friend, John." So then John started behaving a little weird. There was one moment during the day where they were coloring some worksheets together, and Sally was using her crayons, and she had her nice bright red crayon in her hand she was coloring. And John came over and snatched it right out of her hand. And Sally looked at John and said, "Well, why'd you do that?" And he said, "Well, I wanted it, and you're my friend. You're supposed to give it to me." And Sally was like, "Well, that was weird. I'm not sure if that's how this whole friend thing is supposed to go." But she decided to let it slide because they were both new friends, and she didn't want to make any bad judgments about maybe who John was. So a little bit of time passes and they go outside to recess, and Sally's getting ready to go down the slide. And John comes up to Sally and nudges her out of the way. And he said, "I want to go down the slide." And Sally said, "Well, John, why did you push me? It was my turn." He goes, "Oh, well, you're my friend. You're supposed to let me go in front of you." And Sally was like, "Okay, this is starting to get a little weird." And so she said to John, "John, that's not how friends are supposed to act. And if you keep doing this to me, I don't think you're going to get to be my friend." And so John got all frustrated and left in a huff and a puff. But Sally kept remembering something that her grown-ups at home told her, right? So they had been reading this really cool book that the grown-ups at TFC are reading, and the author, Bell Hooks, says something. She says that love is what love does. And if friends love each other, that means that you treat them as if you love them. So maybe John's had something going on at home that was making him a little bit grumpy. Maybe he didn't have loving behavior shown to him by the adults in his life. But Sally knew that love is what love does. If you love someone, you treat them in loving ways. So that's our emerging generations moment for today. I want to invite you to bring those fingers up and wiggle them. Put them on your belly. Let's take 2 more deep breaths, and then we'll say our affirmation together. So take a deep breath in and let it out. One more time, breathe in and let it out. Now you can repeat after me. God made me on purpose. There are people here today who love and affirm me. Today I can be my authentic self, include someone, and disrupt what hurts others, just as Jesus showed me. All right, thank you all for coming to the Emerging Generations moment today. Now we're going to kick it over to TFC worship, and we're going to have some music together.
God above us, God above us, take hurt away, take pain away. God above us, God above us, take pain away. take hurt away. You are here, turning lives around. We worship you, we worship you. You are here, mending every heart. We worship you, we worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, turning lives around. We worship you, we worship you. You are here, mending every heart. We worship you, we worship you. All because you're a waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. God, our mother, God, our mother, take pain away, take pain away. God, our mother, God, our mother, take hurt away, take hurt away. Take it away, take pain away, yeah. Take stress away. Oh, take hurt away, yeah. Take hurt away, yeah. Take hurt away, yeah. God above us, God above us, take hurt away, take pain away. God above us, God above us, take pain away, take it away.
Man.
That song just like gets me every time, you know?
Yeah, man. Yes, that is so beautiful. Wow. And shout out to Marielle and TFC Worship for making that, special acknowledgement of God our Mother, particularly during Women's History Month, as we celebrate. I think that's so important that we recognize the expanse of who God is, that we don't limit God to any one thing, that we can see God as a mother just as easily as we can see God as a father. And I'm grateful for that. By the way, Callie, I totally missed the pun. That was good. Did y'all catch
I do
that?
what I can.
Darnell, Nani, did y'all catch her pun earlier? Because I missed it.
I did not catch it.
Say the pun
And
again, Callie.
That for these 2 chapters, Belle didn't let us off the hook. I'm terrible, I know. Well, anyways, let's get us back on track before we derail even further. But seriously, Belle did not give us an easy task today with the chapters that we're going to be looking at. But before we get into the chapters on mutuality and romance, I do want to highlight what we talked about last week in Bible and Beyond. Myron led us through a phenomenal conversation about greed and how greed can be an obstacle to love. And so before we get into the stuff for today, I just wanted to open some space for if you had some reflections on that during the week that you wanted to share. And this is for everybody in the virtual sanctuary as well, like in the chats. Go ahead and blow it up if there's anything that stood out to you from that conversation, or that like you ruminated on it a little bit and it just kind of sat with you that you want to share. We want to open that space. But I did want to open that space here as well. Did anybody have anything that really stuck with them from the conversation last week, or are we good to jump into the new stuff? All right, cool. We'll just go ahead and jump on in. But like, if you are in the chat today, we do want to encourage you to share any of those thoughts that you have from last week too, because we know it all goes down in the chat. So we just want to give you a space to do that. All right, so for today though, we're talking about chapters 9 and 10, actually, both of them. And the first chapter is about mutuality, which I thought was really cool, considering mutuality is such a big part of the sexual ethic that we teach here at TFC, right? Like for us, Christian came up with the acronym CCM, which I believe is compatibility, consent, and mutuality. Did I hit them all?
Consent, communication.
And my bad, I almost had it.
No, it's all good.
But yeah, so mutuality comes up for us already a lot in our TFC spaces. But mutuality is also such an important part of our platonic relations too, right? Our non-romantic relationships. So the relationships that we have with our friends, our colleagues, our coworkers, siblings, like mutuality is a big part of all of that. And so before we get into our first question, I just wanted to read this quote from Bell Hooks. Because it is such, I think, a powerful part of that chapter, and I think is really going to help us guide our conversation here. So for those of you who have the book, it's on page 152. And for those of you that don't, you don't need it in order to participate in the conversation. Okay, so this conversation today is very much set up for us to be able to talk about the topic in general. And if you want to dig into the book to learn more, we invite you to do that. But here's the quote. "The privilege of power is at the heart of patriarchal thinking. Girls and boys, women and men who have been taught to think this way almost always believe love is not important, or if it is never as important as being powerful, dominant, in control, on top, being right. This is precisely why it is so difficult for women and some men to leave relationships where the central dynamic is a struggle for power." That just, when I was reading that this week, I was like, well, this is where we're going. So the first question for today is, how has power played into your relationships? And Darnell, if it's okay, I want to start with you. So how has power played into your relationships?
Oh man, that's such a loaded question.
Ain't it though? It's like a setup, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's not meant to be.
She set us up. We know we were getting ourselves into.
Honestly, the first relationship that comes to mind, really with all of these questions, but for this one, is my very rocky relationship that I've had with my mother. It has just been a constant power struggle. I think that a lot of parents, which I mean is understandable, struggle with the transition from, young adulthood to adulthood with their children, and kind of loosening and letting go of those reins. But just my journey of learning to set boundaries with my parents, with my mother in particular, has been a very, just a very rocky road. And I've really had to learn to be patient with myself, learn to forgive myself, and trust myself in that power dynamic, because she has really had a hard time letting go in a lot of areas. But I've been so committed to myself and to my love of self that I and understanding that my autonomy, my personal power, is very important to me, and not letting anyone come in and interrupt my peace in that situation.
Personal power and not letting folks interrupt your peace, like that, those are two incredibly powerful statements that you just said. I just want to make sure that folks caught that. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Nani?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about power in my formative years, power was male, and power harmed, and power took from. And so, I think about how now in my most intimate relationships, so that would be with my partner, my husband, and my children. And I think about when I'm not in a healthy space, that power is played out in control. So when I am not my best self, it's like I'm like trying to protect. I'm trying to protect because that so much power was taken from me as a child that when I'm not well, my first instinct is to go to control, to like that. And, I want to say that for the first time, I think in my life, that I got to see an example of a mutual relationship was through my friendships with my girlfriends, where power looked like empowerment. That power looked like a giving to, and so yeah, I want to say that I show my power in my unhealthy way by protecting and trying to control. And so it definitely was a loaded question and so layered for me.
And like, I think the control thing is such like a big part of that, right? Because like we believe this, facade really that like, first of all, we can have control over certain aspects in our life. Like there are certain things that are just outside of our control, but we believe that if we can gain control over those things, somehow we've gained some power in that situation, right? And so like, first of all, kudos to you for like recognizing those patterns within yourself, right? And like, because that is such a crucial part, I think, to healing. And thank you so much for sharing that with everyone today, because that's a cool thing that you're able to kind of really just have that level of self-awareness. How about you, Christian?
Oh yeah, this is loaded. And before I even go, I'll just share what some people put in the chat, because I felt some really good stuff going on in there. And this one right here, Pamela said, I feel like my first relationship with power was my church. It permeated every part of my life growing up. Was a big one. And then earlier to your first question, actually, Tiffany said something that came up for her is what Bell Hook's offering in this book even possible? Is this just a utopian concept, or is a world this loving even possible? Which is a profound question. Yeah.
And can I offer a response to that? you know, I don't know if most folks know kind of like the context around this book. So this is the first book in a series of 3 books that Bell Hooks and wrote, and the series is called A Love Letter to the Nation. So she wrote all 3 of these books out of a place of just like recognizing the brokenness in an American society. And so I'm not sure if she has hope that this kind of world is possible, but she wrote this letter, essentially this love letter to America, saying, hey, if we are going to even have a chance at being a loving society, these are the things that we've got to think about. So this is just part 1 of 3, y'all. So hopefully that gives us at least an idea of where she's going. And if you want to learn more, you can check out parts 2 and 3.
Yeah, she was walking heavy. Bell Hooks was walking real heavy. So when I think about how power played into my relationships, what immediately came to mind for me was my relationship with Pamela. And Pamela's resting today. She's in there in the chat. So she's not here to defend herself. Usually she'd be right next to me. So I get to just speak freely today. She can't stop me. She can't pinch me under the table. So this is going to be fun.
Now, how much do you want to play with that fire, Christian?
I would just take my chances and see what happens. No, so my relationship with Pamela it's not a power struggle. I really like how Nani put it. It's an empowering situation because we're both very intense people. We both have our own power. Like when we got together, we already had a certain level of authority, just over our own lives. And we came together to try to, figure out how to navigate that. And it's a constant give take. So there are moments where Pamela pulls back and lets me go. And then there are moments where I got to pull back and let her go. And then there are moments where we pull on each other. And we just have to trust each other a lot of times, because neither one of us is going to lord over the other. So we both have to make a mutual decision to empower each other along the way. Because if either of us tries to lord over the other and overpower the other, the relationship will go south very quickly. So it's a constant work in progress for us to support and affirm and empower each other as strong as our personalities are.
Mm-hmm. And I love how, like, both for you and Nani, you talk about power as like kind of like a neutral thing, right? Like power can be good, power can be bad. But it's, not to be a nerd and quote like Spider-Man, right? But with great power comes great responsibility, right? So recognizing like how can I use the power that I have within myself, my own autonomy, to like build a relationship that's good for both of us, right? And that's full of that empowerment. That's really cool.
I even thought about it in terms of like ministry, like how this generation of ministry is very different from generations prior, at least in my faith traditions, because like here it is. Previous generations wanted their faith leaders to like lead them, to direct them. Like they wanted their faith leaders to tell them what to do. And now this generation is shifting into not wanting to be led, but wanting to be empowered. Mm-hmm. So I'm empowering you to do this thing, and it's just a totally different dynamic that Callie, you and I are navigating, right? As faith leaders in this space. What does that even look like? Because like sometimes you want me to empower. And then there are those moments where it's like, just give me the answer.
Right, just tell me what to do.
Just tell me what to do. Like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have to work it out. Just tell me the concrete answer. So it's like this like little give and take. Like, well, wait a minute now, because you want your autonomy, you want your agency. So you got to, take everything that comes along with that. So it's a really interesting path to navigate.
Hmm. For sure. And it's like, when I was thinking through my own relationships as well, I kept thinking back to just growing up in like in youth group, right? So like I grew up in a small town in East Tennessee, like heart of the Bible Belt, um, kind of place, painting a picture here. And it was so interesting that there was this phrase that I would hear these Southern women say, right? Who, like, they said they believed in the inerrancy of the Bible, that they believed that their husbands were supposed to lord over them, that they were supposed to be subservient and whatnot. But they would say, like, almost exactly like this every single time: the man may be the head of the house, but the woman is the neck. And she can turn the head any way she wants it to go. And I was thinking about that this week, and I was like, well, what a really interesting way for you to admit that you think gender complementarity is terrible. Like, you are agreeing that the system isn't working for you. But instead of saying that this structure of relationships not working for you, you're just finding ways to manipulate this person that you say that you love. Instead of saying, well, maybe the whole structure is the problem, right? And so
There's
I
so
think
much at
about that a
risk.
lot. Yeah.
There's so much at risk. I I think about that all the time, and it looked like Nani was gonna say something, but this is like there are these systems that oppress us, but they're familiar,
Hmm.
and the unfamiliar is more terrifying than the oppressive system we're familiar with sometimes, and that is like a really big challenge.
Hmm. For
You
sure.
gonna
Yeah.
say something? I'm sorry. I think Nani was gonna say something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hate that. I hate the women are the neck and we're turning like the head. I was like, I got my own head. Like, I, I want to turn my own head. Like that takes all of my energy already. Like,
Hmm.
I I think for me, something that you said, Christian, was like I mean, there's a risk. And I know the way that I grew up, like it was a risk for women in my community to say anything, And so, and I actually was just speaking to a friend, and she was like, yeah, there was a situation where I was ready to speak my mind, and she said, and I could almost feel like my ancestors trying to tell me to, like, shh, like, don't do that.
Mm.
We don't do that. Like, we don't do that. And she said that she had a moment and she told her ancestors in her body that it's okay now. That
Mm.
it's okay now. Like, this is what you fought for. This is what your agency, this is the agency, this is what your agency having to, like, yeah, kind of do the manipulation behind the scenes. Like, but this is what it bought. It bought the opportunity for me to now speak. So I'm going to do that. And we're going to be okay. And we're going to
Mm.
be okay. But it's for real. It's for real.
Darnell or Christian, you want to add to that, or anything sparking for you?
I'm really thinking about this power thing from the perspective of a Black queer man, and just living in a society and even in a culture as a Black man where the power is mostly held by Black heterosexual cisgendered men, and having to constantly acquiesce to that, having to hide in the midst of that and find ways to work around that, for the sake of my own survival. And that's a very hard, it's a very hard place to live in, for the greater majority of the beginning of your life. Like Nani was saying when she said power is harm, and your default ends up being to protect yourself. In my coming out, in my leaving the church, I have seen all of that play out in my life where as soon as I took those steps, just in love of self, I felt all of that protective energy, all of that defensive energy rise to the surface. And I actually found myself protecting myself against people that I didn't need to. Because my body, my nervous system, my mind, everything in me has been so used to having to acquiesce to that power dynamic of heterosexual people and the religious system. So yeah, it's a hard one.
And I think like you and Nani both are bringing up some really important points about like how do we subvert the system, right? Because we see this in the Bible as well. Like we know that in the Hebrew Bible in particular, women had no agency whatsoever, and so like there are stories about them kind of going behind their husbands' backs and plotting or like doing things that we in today's society may consider like a little over the top. But we're not them. We're not in that position of having absolutely no power and having to kind of like work around the system in order to get the necessities we need to live and to thrive. And so now I think we have this question of, can we just flip that on and off, right? And have these safe people, right? And like these people who I know love me and affirm me for who I am, that I have chosen to enter into relationship with, whether that's a romantic interest or a good friend or whoever. It's like, am I going to be able to flip that switch off and not accidentally use those same survival tactics on them? Because in this relationship, that would be harm. But in this real world living, like this is what I need to do to survive. And so that's some of the nuance that I didn't get from the book, but definitely gives us a lot to chew on. All right, Christian, anything exciting going on in the comments?
Anything. I mean, Lord, okay. This is a lot. First of all, Derek and Brittany were both happy to know that you're a nerd because they're nerds too. And Derek feels seen. So
I do what I can.
Shout out to all the comic book nerds and everybody who's into that jam. I love it. And then man, so many things are happening. Nani, you messed me up. And then Darnell, yeah, both of your stories just really messed me up. Tamara said this, and I thought it was pretty cool. She said, I'm part of the previous generation in age. However, I love flowing in the empowerment concept. It's like I didn't fit in during my younger years because I thought so differently. And there are a lot of people that are in that space. It's like when I was younger, there were people that they just seemed different. And then I got older and I had some lived experiences and I started to expand my view of the world, and I revisited some of those people, and it was like, oh, you were on this wave the whole time. Like, wow, that's so cool. And then I realized they were just misunderstood in a lot of ways. So that's something that really comes up. Yeah. And the last thing, this was what came up for me. Pamela said that she and I talk all the time about how I trigger people that I'm called to lead and serve. It is a constant struggle. I was talking to Bishop Carlton Pearson on his platform on Tuesday, and he called out all of these attributes about me that made me a good fit to do what I do. It's like, you're Black, you're male, you're handsome, you're married, you're you're talented, you're this. I was like, that sounds good. But in the spaces that I occupy, some of that stuff is a knock against me, because it triggers people when they encounter me. And that's just such a challenging part of this work. It's like knowing that the way I show up in the world is a trigger for people I'm called to serve. And then how do I balance that without shrinking myself? It's heavy.
All right. Well, in a minute, we're going to kick it over to Christian to do our TFC Where You Need to Be. But before that, I do want to give us something to chew on for this commercial break. So in this chapter on mutuality, Bell Hooks quotes Paul Tillich saying that the first rule of love is to listen. And if you've been around TFC at all, you've probably heard Christian say at least one time that the first rule of love is to do no harm, which is how John Wesley, founder of the Methodist Church, defines love. So I just want to invite us to chew on both of those definitions. Paul Tillich says first rule of love is to listen. John Wesley says first rule of love is to do no harm. And just to kind of think about where you've seen those things play out in your own life. And while you all are doing that ruminating, let's kick it over to Christian for TFC Where You Need to Be.
Absolutely. I'm gonna give y'all a break here for a second, and I'll handle this. So if y'all need to take a little break, I just want to say something real quick. If anybody ever wants to mess with me, like, I'm gonna get Susan Willis on you. I'm telling you right now, Susan is my ride or die. Okay, Susan doesn't play about me. That is my friend. Every time I see Susan, I'm gonna shout her out. Because when I was injured and in a bed for 5 months, she cooked for me every week. So Susan, I love you. Thank you for always looking out for me. But yeah, it's time. TFC Where You Need to Be. Here's something that you may or may not know, right? So at TFC, we built a digital edifice. I talked about that in January at our January worship experience. So we try to make sure you have access to everything that you need digitally. So I want to take you through something in case you haven't seen this. And I'm going to try it real quick. Like I'm doing like the technology. So I'm multitasking here. So let me see if I can do this. Boom. Somebody show me some love in the chat. I just did that in one take. All right, so here we are, right? This is the website, right? Actually, we should go back one page. Yes, this is the website. All right, so if you go to the faithcommunity.org, you're going to find this website right here. And this is the announcement for today. When you get to this website, if you scroll down under connect, you see where it says newsletter. If you click that right there, it's going to drop you into this newsletter. If you're not already subscribed, you can subscribe right there. But when you come here, this gives you all the information about what's going on in the world of TFC. And sometimes we have a lot of stuff going on that people don't know about. So when you are wondering what's going on, you can come right here to this page. You see, we got this whole calendar right here. So right now we are at the 11th Bible and Beyond. Next week, we got the Ministers Collective. If you're not familiar with the Ministers Collective, it is our community of collaboration for ministers to come together, to brainstorm, to learn. And we have a monthly gathering where Myron Randall and I share some insight, and we do workshops and we practice stuff together. And this Monday, we're doing the Art of Storytelling workshop. So the last time we got together, Myron and I talked about storytelling and we modeled storytelling. And this time we're all going to practice it together. So if you want to join the Ministers Collective, if that's something that appeals to you, we'll put the link in the chat to that group. Somebody can do that for me. I don't know if I told anybody I was going to ask them to do that, but we're here now. So if somebody can find the link and put it in the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. And then next Saturday, y'all, we got worship. So I know normally we're expecting worship the last Saturday of the month. But this month it landed on the 18th because logistically, that's just how we needed to do it. So if you plan to be with us in Atlanta, the one time of the month where we get together in person is going to be next Saturday. And remember, I'm right here on the website. All of this information, there's a calendar. You can get merch on the website. Here's the information for the workshop for the Ministers Collective. Everything you need about TFC is going to be right here on this website. So that is a resource that I want you to know about within the TFC stratosphere. All right. So those are your announcements for the day. Next, I want to thank everybody who stepped up. Now, we talked in January about where we are financially as a ministry and just learning how to navigate what it means to be a digital community of faith. Like that has been such a challenge. And let me answer Latriva's question. Is it only from ministers? Okay, let me say that. Let me address that real quick. So a lot of times when we say minister, people hear preacher. But this is not just a group for preachers. This is a group for people who minister, who serve the needs of others. So if you do anything that is public facing, if you speak to people, if you teach, if you do learning facilitation, even if you are working on creating content for social media, that's who that space is for. We are sharing ideas and insight about how to minister to people better. And it's not just limited to preaching. And that's a question I get a lot because many of us come from a paradigm where minister meant preacher, meaning you need to get up in that pulpit and take a text. That's not what this is. All right. So again, I want to say thank you to everybody that stepped up. We laid out where we were financially at the top of the year. I made a plea for you all to partner with us in your giving by setting up recurring giving. We're trying to get to a point where we can give our team a living wage. That's our goal right now, to get our team to a living wage. And we asked everybody to set up recurring giving. And from January to February, our giving went up about $1,500. So can you give yourselves a hand? For those of you who responded, can you give yourselves a hand? That is like such a major blessing because we're really working on sustaining this work, right? In order for us to move forward and do all the things that we want to do, we got to sustain it financially. So we're asking the people who benefit from this ministry, whether you consider yourself a member or if you're just a participant, we ask you to partner with us. So thank you to those of you who have already done that. And for those who haven't, today is your opportunity to do so. You can give in a number of different ways. You know what? Usually we show the graphic, but today I want to show you this again, because it's a resource at your disposal. If you go to thefaithcommunity.org, you scroll down under support, see where it says giving. If you click there, it'll take you to any of those platforms. So Givelify, PayPal, Cash App. Those are ways that you can give. So again, if you go to thefaithcommunity.org and click giving, it'll set you up right there. Okay. So I want to ask everybody to give. As we prepare to do that, let's go ahead and say our giving affirmation together. This is our giving affirmation at TFC. It says, I don't give out of guilt, shame, or unhealthy obligation. I give out of gratitude for what God has given to me. I give because I believe in what God is doing through this community for me and others. I give because I believe that it will come back to me good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. I am loved, accepted, and affirmed here based on who I am, not what I have. All right, y'all, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give, and we're going to bring everybody back in so we can continue on with this session. I think Darnell needs, oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. Callie, it's yours.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear what came up for y'all as you were ruminating. So, Nani, you want to kick us off? Like, what came up for you when hearing those two definitions for the first rule of love?
I would say that, yes, I think, and later I can unpack a little bit more, but yeah, I think that coming from harmful power dynamics and looking for love, I definitely was like, can we just start off with safe? But, like, can we just start off with safe? But as I have matured, I feel like I hold bell hooks definition, but I would expand it and say that the first step of love would be to listen to yourself. I just feel like for me, in what deconstruction and decolonizing has looked like, is because always it was all about loving others. You love and you love and you love. And then when I came to a point where I didn't love myself, or I didn't know how to love myself, I couldn't even love the people around me. Like, I didn't even, for me, I just feel like the default now would be to first turn towards listening to what is stirring within me and how spirit is speaking in me.
And I appreciate you adding that pronoun in there, right? Because it's very much like the conservative evangelical upbringing in me is very much having like that reaction of like, oh, well, you can't, like, if you can't listen to yourself, then you can't listen to others. And it's like, no, like there's none of that reciprocity needed in that moment, right? Like, we can start with listening to myself. We can start with saying, am I harming myself, or am I putting myself in harm's way? Like, we can start there and that just be step one. It doesn't need to be for the sake of sending that outward. So that's awesome. Thank you. How about you, Darnell? What's coming up for you?
I want to piggyback on what Nani said, actually, about listening to self. That resonated so deeply with me, because that has been the like the rudder or the propeller of my journey, my deconstruction journey, my self-love journey, my journey of personal power. And really knowing my power is learning my voice, and not only learning my voice, but learning to trust my voice. Learning that when I say no, my no is good enough. Learning that when I change my mind about something, that it's okay. Learning that I'm not, that there is really no wrong decision on my path. Like, the decision that I make that I feel is right for me is the decision that is okay. And coming out of religious systems where you have to choose the right thing, take the right path, decide on the right purpose, decide on the right, it has to be perfectly in God's will, packaged the right way. Knowing your voice is a major thing.
And it's wild how that can spill over into so many different areas of life, right? Like, this may seem really silly at first, but I'm going to talk about, my day job. So most of y'all know that I tutor high schoolers, for my day job. And so I do a lot of like high school math, fun, and grammar and things. But when we get to the math problems in particular, a lot of my students will just really freeze up and they're like, well, what's the right way to do this problem? And I'm like, spoiler alert, every math problem has multiple correct ways to do it. Like, some of them click better with how you process information. Some of them are really time inefficient, but there are multiple correct ways to do it. And when they have that realization of, oh, there's not just one right thing, there's not one right path, like it changes everything for them and how they approach their own learning and understanding how their mind works. And it's like, if we could apply that to our spirituality, right? There's no one right way to approach God. There's no one right way to approach divine. There's no one right way to approach how we see ourselves and our spirits and our whole identity, right? It's like that is an incredibly liberating process.
Can I say one more thing, Callie?
Yeah, please.
And even there's no one right way to approach human relationships.
Yes.
We're complex, we're nuanced, we're multi-layered, multi-dimensional people. And we're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to say the right thing. And so we have to approach relationships still listening to that inner voice and knowing that it's okay this time if I didn't get it right. It's okay this time if I have to come back and apologize. It's okay this time, you know. And so that point about listening to ourselves and trusting ourselves, even in our relationships. Absolutely.
Right. How about you, Christian?
This is so rich. I love
right?
this. So this is so rich. And I mean, the comments are rich too. Pamela said earlier that part of her religious trauma work is helping people recognize which voice is theirs. They have so many voices that creep up, and trying to figure out which one belongs to them is something that Pamela does a lot of work with in her religious trauma. And then Tiffany said, the more you love yourself fully, the more you're able to recognize what love feels like for others, and more importantly, what doesn't feel like love for others. And that's a lot of work. And that's why I always tell people that greatest commandment theology is really easy to comprehend, but like the execution of it, like actually living it out, is a lot of hard work. And I feel like a broken record when I say that, but it's like, I feel like it's just worth repeating, because you know, like when Tiffany said earlier about, is this world of love, like, it's like a utopian concept. I think that's a part of our journey. Part of our journey is to always strive to deepen our love. So it may be a utopian concept, but the journey is so rewarding. And I believe that's where a lot of people find themselves in this space as we're deconstructing and decolonizing and putting back together what our faith life looks like. The joy is in the journey. So as you're striving to deepen the love with the ebbs and the flows that come along with it, there's so much joy in taking the journey toward that you celebrate yourself along the way. And I believe that's the beauty of it. That, yeah, we're probably not going to experience that utopian concept in the world, but the goal is to have it in here, even when it's not out there. And I think that's what's really, really beautiful.
And Christian, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the kingdom, and perhaps that utopia, just a thought, maybe it is the kingdom in us. Maybe what Bell Hooks is presenting is when Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom doesn't look like these power struggles. Just a thought.
That was the Holy Ghost right there. The Holy Ghost came through you on that one. I felt it. You had to hold that one back. I saw it in there. That was good. That was good. Oh yeah, I didn't even say what my take was, right? Like, so do no harm and listen to yourself. I love both of those as a first rule of love. I don't think there has to be only one first rule. I landed on do no harm as I was thinking about it, because I was thinking about it from like a macro big picture perspective. Like, what is a framework that all of humanity could get with on some level? right? Regardless of our cultural context, our time in history. I was thinking on those terms, like this is the theology that I'm going to live by. And then as a faith leader, this is the theology I'm going to espouse. So I want to think in big terms. And I thought about do no harm was a macro idea for me, because there are people on the other side of the world, that I don't know. But, there might be actions that I do that could cause them harm. And if I know a better way, let me go a better way. And that could be my expression of love for them, because I just believe that we can't help everybody, but we can at least do our best not to harm anybody. So that was why I came at it from that perspective. At the same time, when I think about this idea of listening to yourself, that is the greatest expression of love I have ever given myself. Like in my effort to do no harm, listening to myself is a part of that process, because I have to, really listen to my body and what's going on. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? And sometimes it's a matter of, like Pamela talked about this in therapy and theology, we got to slow down sometimes. She was putting that together for her therapy and theology group, and we were talking through it. And it has blessed me so much, because I've been reminding myself almost daily, slow down, because there's so much stuff going on, like every day. And it's like, Christian, just slow down, because it's going to be there one way or the other. And for me, that is like an expression of love. So I absolutely love both concepts for different reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting, like in hearing all three of you talk, you remind me of the next quote on the outline. Bell Hooks is quoting, I think he was a psychologist, Dr. Fromm, when he said the desire to love is not itself love. Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and action. Will also implies choice. We do not have to love, we choose to love. So like the interesting thing in everything that you all were saying just now was like, I made the choice to listen to myself. I am making the choice to not cause harm if I can help it. Right. And so it's interesting to hear that kind of lived experience come up and how you all are choosing to love yourselves. Right. So I'm curious to hear if there have been other times that you made the definitive choice to love, or maybe if there was a time where you had to make a choice not to love. Christian, you want to start us off here?
Not really. This is so heavy. This is so heavy. I think for me, and this is what comes up for me, so I'm gonna talk about it. This ministry is a choice to love. TFC, Holy Smokes, is my choice to love, because I was thinking about it this morning as I was reflecting on what we would talk about today. And I was like, you know what? Fashion and style is the career that I chose. I chose to do fashion and style. Ministry chose me. Because I always remember my dad saying, if you can avoid it, son, do something else. Trust me. But at the same time, he was like so proud when I told him that I felt the call to preach. So it's like he wanted me to go a different path, but at the same time, he wanted me to follow in his footsteps, because like he knew how difficult it was going to be, but he knew how effective I could be if I did it. So I live that out now. And like every time I do anything for this work, particularly right now in the place where we are, as a ministry, it's a labor of love. I choose to love every time I do this. It's why I'm tickled every time somebody suggests on my social media, oh, you're just doing this for the money. You're just doing this for the likes and the money. And I'm thinking, what money? Like what? Like I already had that laid out. Like that was the conversation that I was having with Bishop Pearson on Tuesday. Like, the money was laid out already. So taking this path as a labor of love couldn't have been about the money, right? Why would I choose this? But this chose me. So every time it's my love that pushes me forward in doing it. And I choose not to love when I don't listen to myself. And it happens too frequently. It happens all too frequently. Sometimes when I'm sharing content on social media, it's a conversation that I'm having with myself. There was one day I shared a video where I said, the more life speeds up, the more you have to slow down and just let it come to you. That's because I was having that conversation with myself that morning. And I had to tell myself that. And when I don't do that, I'm not loving myself.
Hey, Nani, how about for you? What came up for you?
I too am going to piggyback on what Christian said. I have chosen to love the church. You know, like I too, like, listen, I have been a ministry leader, have led a church, was destroyed emotionally, spiritually, like, and yet I'm here trying to reimagine how to serve the church still and be with her. But be with her in ways that are reciprocal, right? In ways that feed me too, because I think that gifts are for ourselves too, And they're not just for those who we serve, they're for us too. And I am still in the process of reimagining what that looks like. That is a part of why I'm doing these like unique ways of ministries, because I know that the traditional ways have not served me and did not love me. So yeah, and I did choose not to love the church for a long time, for almost 5 years. And here I am, like, just I'm like, it's like I can't, it's like a magnetic pull back, because I love her so much. And she formed me. You know, the church has, and there is still so much good, and I am hopeful, and I'm in a better place now that I have chosen to love myself first. But yeah, I did need time of separation.
And it sounds like being able to love yourself first gave you the empowerment to make the choice to love the church.
Absolutely.
Right? Because like without, yeah, exactly. Because like without that love of self, like we open ourselves up to like being manipulated by the church, or like just used by the church again and again and again. Because like I have definitely have my own experience of church hurt and being, exploited for the work that I was providing. But when you make that choice to like love yourself, you recognize the capacity that you have. And then it really is a choice that you're making of your own volition, out of your own empowerment. That's an incredibly powerful word, Nani.
And I love how Bell Hooks says the practice of love and the choice of love. And I think that word choice and consent is just absent from so much of the theology that many of us was raised in, is this choice. And when during this time of discernment and being away is just having the opportunity to choose was filling, like just filled me already. that, oh my gosh, I had a choice, that I get to do what is flowing from within me and not out of empty.
That's awesome. How about you, Darnell? What do you got cooking over there?
I don't know why I'm having a visceral reaction to this question.
It's
But
okay.
I'm gonna say I chose not to love the church. And at first, I saw that as a bad thing, or something that I should be ashamed of or feel guilty for. But the longer I stayed with my decision to not love the church, I it was like I watched my own growth as a person, as an individual, as a man, as a gay man, as a minister. I chose not to love the church, to love myself better, to let go of the abusive relationship that I had with the church and with church leadership. This is so much. Yeah.
And I think Josh Carpenter is on your wavelength as well, because he said something similar in the comments. He said that it is incredibly hard to love a church that doesn't love you, right? And I think sometimes in this conversation, it's easy to overlook the fact that, like, the church has a choice too, right? And if the first rule of love is to do no harm, then the church has an obligation to follow that as well. So if the church is causing harm, is breaking that rule, then how can the church expect us to give something that it's not willing to give us?
That's so good. The church has a choice too. The church has a choice too. And when you're made aware that you're doing harm and you choose to do it anyway, I don't feel bad for what happens to you. Because people out here hurting in real life.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, people out here hurting. Yeah, got a choice. That's
Like,
good.
I just it brings me to tears because the church still does not grasp the weight and the magnitude of harm that she is doing.
Yeah.
And I think about being on the brink of suicide in 2017. And I was at my wit's end. I just could not do it anymore. And yeah, I had to choose Darnell. I had to choose Darnell. There was no other option at that point.
I want to say I'm proud of you for choosing Darnell. Even if that choice wouldn't have led you here, even if that choice led you in a totally different path and I never met you, I'm proud of you then for choosing yourself. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Christian.
And I also just, like, in this moment, want to highlight how, first of all, how vulnerable all of you have been. Like, you have added so much just realness to this conversation, to this community, as we're sitting here like doing church together, right? And doing community together and sharing our loads with one another and doing this beautiful kind of reflection so that, we can grow individually, our neighbor can grow, and we can all learn how to love each other well. I also just want to affirm that one of the things I love the most about this community is we can have a conversation like this. Nani can say, I chose to love the church. Darnell can say, I chose not to love the church. And we're not going to fight about it. We're going to honor each other's lived experiences and recognize that these are the decisions that we have had to make to love ourselves better that allow us to be healed or healing people in the world. Right. And so if anybody's watching the stream today and this is your first interaction with TFC, like this is simultaneously an incredibly special conversation and also just another day at TFC. Right? Like we're not about to sit here and chastise one another for what we think about the church or how we view love or whatnot. We very much believe that our differences are what make this community so rich. So thank you all for being brave and bold today in this conversation. Yeah, Christian, is there anything you want to add to that?
I mean, just, there's so much love in the chat right now. Shout out to everybody in the chat. So much love for Darnell. Leah Mia said for her, it was 2014. Everybody has their story, and I feel like that's part of my work. I feel like part of my work is being the keeper of stories. Because I learned so much from listening to everybody's stories. And it's like, oh, this is a trend. This is a shared experience that a lot of people have. And I so appreciate everybody sharing their stories. Pamela wants to affirm you as well, Darnell. I'm glad you made the choice to save yourself. What we need to save ourselves is already in us. And I believe Jesus came to point us to that the kingdom is in you. Like Darnell said, the kingdom is already in you. The joy is in you. The capacity is in you. The love is in you. And it's about how do you tap into that? And I just love it so much. I love it.
And I have to say, I've never felt more loved. I've never felt more at peace and more in tune with myself than when I left the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same. Can I say that? I took 3 years away from the church. I didn't go to church at all. I had this small group in my apartment that was my community. We met every Thursday. But like church, I'm not doing this no more. I was going to the corporate world. Like, forget this. Because very similar to a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago where a colleague of mine was talking about how the church ostracized him for his queerness. And he told the story of being ostracized. And I could identify with a lot of what he said, but I wasn't ostracized from my queerness. I was ostracized from my curiosity. But the treatment wound up being the same because he was telling the story. I was like, yeah, I went through that too. Yeah, I went through that too. Yeah, I went through that too. So it's such a beautiful thing for us to be able to come together and talk about these shared experiences. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And like, for me, like the biggest thing that is coming from both the readings for this week and just all of what you all are sharing is that love requires agency, whether that's love for the self or love for my neighbor. If I'm choosing to give love to someone or something outside of myself, all of that requires me to be able to be an autonomous agent in the world, making my own decisions and doing what is good for me, right? So long as it's not harming anybody else, I got to do what's good for me, so that I might experience love, right? And bell hooks, like towards the end of chapter 10, she says this, and I think we can kind of adapt it for our context a little bit. She says, the essence of true love is mutual recognition, two individuals seeing each other as they really are. And I think we can also kind of expand that to say a mutual recognition within ourselves, like being able to look in the mirror and see myself as I really am and love myself as I really am. You know, it has to be that intentional act of recognition. So before we wrap it up for today, are there any last thoughts, comments from today that anyone want to share? Because I certainly don't want to cut anybody off, because this conversation has been so rich, and I think it's going to be a conversation that folks in the community are going to revisit, because you all have just shared so much beautiful wisdom today. But are there any final thoughts that you would like to share?
I was thinking about that this space really helps people to heal their own stories.
Mm.
And that, you know, I believe that we are in so many different spaces, and that when our stories are healed, that we can be a part of healing other people's stories. And I really hold that so tenderly here. And I think that we can heal in the space because it's safe and it's vulnerable. Like so many people are commenting, and I appreciate the power that is shared here, the empowerment that I experience in this space. And so I'm so grateful and feeling very tender. And there aren't very many spaces I can be this way in, and so I'm grateful.
I just want to say I love my church. I absolutely love it here. I go in other places sometimes and I'm reminded of how great it is here. I love my church. And that's because of all of us. We all make this what it is. And I love it.
When Marielle sent me the invitation to be on the panel today, my anxiety just went through the roof. And I told her, let me check on something, and I'll give you an answer by the end of the day. And really what I had to check on was not anything on my schedule, because I'm not that busy. I had to check with myself, because one of the things that I struggle with is being seen. And being seen causes a reaction in me. And that's one of the things that have come to the surface since I have been a part of TFC and just being in the space. And I had to push myself to be on the live today and give myself the gift of being seen, because I deserve that. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be seen, the opportunity to be heard. And I love this space. I couldn't be more grateful. I don't know how much I could express my gratitude for TFC. I love you guys.
We love you too, like 100%. This has been a phenomenal conversation today. So we're going to pivot over to our invitation to love real quick, and then I'll kick it back over to Christian to properly benedict us, because we absolutely had church today. But we'll start with our invitation to love. So the invitation to love is, you know, at the end of most traditional church services, or at least in evangelical culture where I grew up, folks would like do an altar call or whatever. This is not that. This is not that at all, because if today's conversation has not, you know, brought any of this to light, we are not about the act of manipulating people into doing something that they don't want to do or making a profession that they don't want to make or anything like that. Not at all. For us, the invitation to love is very much an invitation back to you, and having an opportunity to check in on yourself and to sit with yourself and to recognize the divine within you. I very much believe that all of us have a divine spark within us, gifted to us from the divine. Some people may call it Holy Spirit, some may call it the divine spark. There are many names for it. But for me, it's the divine within us. And so taking an opportunity to look at myself and to look at the love I have for myself is also an opportunity to just agree with God. Because if I can do something loving to myself, if I can show love to myself, if I can listen to myself, do no harm to myself, then I am treating myself the way that God treats me. Right. And so having this opportunity to come back to myself and say, okay, how am I going to choose to love myself today is such a gift. And for the invitation to love today, I want to invite you to ask yourself that question. How am I going to choose to love myself today? And you may not have an answer right now, and that's okay. You may need to sit on it for a minute, and that's totally okay. But I want to invite you to ask yourself that question. That's the first part of our invitation to love. The second part of the invitation to love is really an invitation to connect, and to kind of integrate yourself into the community if you want to, right? So first and foremost, if you're new to this space and you are experiencing TFC really for the first time, we want to say welcome. We already consider you family, but we also want to make sure that you're informed. So if you go to our website, thefaithcommunity.org, and click text to connect, then that's going to prompt you to put your phone number in your name. And essentially all you're doing when you commit to that is you're signing up for our newsletter and you're opening yourself up to have a conversation with somebody on our welcome team, likely Mama Tony, which that phone call is the highlight of everybody's like welcoming process. Like I wish I could be new to TFC so I could have another phone call like that with Tony, like for real. So essentially, when you put your phone number in, you're just saying, yes, I want to receive the newsletter because I want to know what's happening at TFC. And yes, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the ministry and let us learn a little bit about you. So the second invitation for connection is if you've been here for a little while longer, and you've seen kind of what our vibe is about, you've seen conversations like these, been a part of conversations like these, and you say, you know what, I think I want to take the leap and I want to be able to call myself like a full-fledged member of TFC. Then we want to create space for folks to do that. So if you go to thefaithcommunity.org and click join TFC, and there's a quick Google form there. It lets us just know a little bit about what your interests might be, where you want to get plugged in to what we do, because we do so many things at TFC, so many things. Like holy smokes, Bible and Beyond, worship services, that's just the tip of the iceberg, y'all. So we want to encourage people to get in where they fit in. So if you go to thefaithcommunity.org, click join TFC, then you'll have an opportunity to do that. All right, well, I'm going to kick it over to Christian so he can properly benedict us.
Y'all, this has been so good. This has filled my cup today. I haven't been on the Bible and Beyond Live platform in this capacity in a few weeks, so it just feels good to be back in the groove. So just as a reminder, Monday is the Ministers Collective. Derek asked a question in the comments a little bit earlier about the recording of the Ministers Collective. So for everybody who may be wondering, any contributing minister of the faith community is invited to attend the gatherings for free, right? This is a ministry that we created specifically for ministers of the faith community. So if you're already here, you're supporting the ministry, this is one of the ways that we want to support you. For friends of the faith community, like this is not really your church, but like you just participated, you admire it. We invite you to select the donation option. And when you go to the group, you'll see everything right there. For ministers of the faith community, you'll have access to the recording as well. That we send out the recording to our ministers and email. So that's how we make sure the ministers on our list can get access to that when they need it, because that is a resource that we want to make available to our ministers as we all grow together. And then next week, we in worship. It's Women's History Month. We got 2 speakers for Women's History Month. Callie Cawthon-Frills is going to be speaking next Saturday, and Marielle Thomas is going to be speaking next Saturday. And I love this about TFC because those are 2 totally different approaches to preaching happening in the same space, different energy, different vibe, but the richness is there. And I'm so excited about it. It's going to be such a unique experience for Women's History Month. So y'all make sure y'all join us next Saturday. We're going to be right here on the same platforms, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and we'll also be together in person for those who want to come to Atlanta, or if you're already in Atlanta and you want to join us in person. All right, let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll go on with the rest of our evening. God, thank you for what we've experienced here. Wow. Sometimes when we think about our experiences of you, the only word, at least for me, that comes to mind is wow. Thank you for this. Thank you for this space. Thank you for these people that make this space what it is. Thank you for this community, this beloved community where we are just so radical that we allow each other to show up as we are. Now, God, we pray for a world where that isn't so radical, where showing up as yourself doesn't have to be disruptive. And God, if we never experience that anywhere else, help us to maintain it here. Help us to be true to it here. Thank you for the life of Jesus. Thank you for the ministry of Jesus. Thank you for the model that Jesus was. Thank you for the sacrifice of Jesus. Thank you for our current communion with Jesus as an ancestor, if nothing else. We thank you. And we thank you for how you continue to lead us and guide us as we grow in our love for you, as we grow in our love for each other, as we grow in our love for ourselves. Dismiss us from this virtual space, but please don't ever dismiss us from your presence. It's in all of your names that we pray. Ashe and amen. I love y'all. We'll see y'all next time.